Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here. This is episode 63 of the American Reveille Podcast. And if we were going to categorize what we're going to talk about today on the show by food, we would say, one, Donald Trump is like meat and potatoes. We're going to talk about meat and potatoes. Two, Governor Cuomo is like Italian food. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about pasta and garlic nuts. Folks, we got Vladimir Putin in the mix. Pierogies are on the table. And of course, we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter. And that food is actually... Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here. How you guys doing today? This is the 63rd episode of the American Reveille Podcast. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things. We're going to go into some of what Trump may be doing, what he should be doing. Wayne Root talked about a lot of this. We're going to go through an article that describes that. We're going to discuss it. We're going to talk about Cuomo and all of the experts he didn't listen to while he was busy getting even richer from his book deal. We're going to talk about Vladimir Putin at Davos, of all places. Yes, the home of the Great Reset, where he is expressing concern that the world is rapidly going towards the way of World War III, folks. And of course, BLM completely devaluing the already devalued Nobel Peace Prize and becoming nominated for one as a group, apparently. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about it. We're going to figure it out. A couple different topics, trying this new format out. It seems to be working pretty good. We've been pretty busy around here, so as you can imagine, it cuts into a lot of production time while I'm trying to figure out how to make this company grow. Obviously not good. Got to find a better balancing point so we can get content back out to you much more stable. And we will. I'll figure it out within the next couple of days. So just bear with me. I apologize about that, but stuff happens and you got to recalibrate and figure out kind of the best direction to go. So we're going to try a couple different little formats. We're going to see how we can chop some stuff up into extra content for people who want to listen to some of the shorter stuff compared to the longer stuff. Have good listening for both worlds. We're going to see how to play it, but we'll get it figured out. It'll take a couple days, but not too worried about it. What I'd like to do, though, is I'd like to thank you. I'd like to say, whatever you're listening on, please subscribe. Please follow me. Hit the notification bell. I appreciate you so much. And I think there's a lot of value in going through these stories that many of the other folks out there just neglect to cover. We cover some of the main stuff, but at the end of the day, we also end up covering a few things that other folks out there, other companies, other networks, other Republican groups may look upon and deem unworthy. But folks, I think I'm at your wavelength. I think so far you've seen that I'm willing to go to the distance for you. So don't worry about it. Keep following along. Good things are coming. Let's keep talking about Wayne Root, all right? He put out this Trump comeback, all right? Let's talk about it. This is coming out of the Gateway Pundit, Wayne Root. The Trump comeback begins. The plan to make Trump and America great again. This was February 1st, came out by Wayne Allen Root. And these are his words. All right, folks, if you're new here on a lot of these podcasts, we'll read through these articles. We'll discuss them either mid-article or afterwards. We try to have a pretty good time. So don't give up too early. Things do get interesting, and we do end up going down some pretty wondrous rabbit holes. I'm the author of the best-selling book, Trump Rules. My book identifies the top 10 rules Trump rules, that made him one of the greatest winners in world history in business, branding, real estate, celebrity, television, publishing, and politics. Trump is the only person in the world to reach the pinnacle, all right, in world history, to reach the pinnacle of all of those fields we just mentioned, all right? We mentioned business, branding, real estate, celebrity, television, publishing, politics, reaching the pinnacle, all right? In one lifetime, folks, the only person to do that, becoming both a billionaire, becoming the president of the United States, all right? It's not a bad resume. For as much as they talk about the guy, really, you have to admit it isn't a bad resume. I mean, come on. Many critics think Trump's winning streak ended with a presidential loss. I disagree. I know the man. I understand the man. I understand and know what comes next. It may be Trump's greatest chapter yet. And you know, guys, I tend to agree with Wayne Root here. I think that Trump and the way that he thinks, the way that he operates, I tend to believe that this is only going to embolden him, empower him, make him arise from the ashes like a phoenix and lay waste hellfire and brimstone to the opposition. Folks, it seems that you never want to count Trump out, and I believe the left may have created a monster. We'll have to see. It'll be our monster, though. It'll be a good monster. I'm not too worried about that. Simply because Trump is relentless. He may be the most relentless human in world history. The secret to Trump's success is the art of the comeback. Every time he is given up for dead, he makes the biggest comeback yet. He never gives up. He never gives in. He finds a way to turn lemons into lemonade. You can't beat someone like that. You can't bet against someone like that. As I always say, NBAT. Never bet against Trump. Those are strong words, folks. Before I get into the details of the comeback, let's define winning. Trump's critics think he just lost. Therefore, he's no longer a winner. Not true. Back in 2016, Trump won the biggest upset in political history. This time around, he added 11 million new votes. His 74 million votes were the most votes for any incumbent president in American history. Ladies and gentlemen, Trump also received more votes than any Republican in the history of our country. Sorry, Trump haters, that's called a winning at superhuman levels. And that is something I have noticed. Haven't you guys noticed that most of the people that hate on Trump haven't ever won anything themselves? I noticed that. Most of the people bitching and moaning to me about what a piece of crap I am because I'm a Trump supporter look like they haven't left their mama's basement. And that is a very kind way for me to say it. That is an understatement, as they would say, folks. Nonetheless, we're reading again. Trump lost on paper and Biden won. Democrats, rhinos, and the fake news media all believe Trump is finished. So now it's time for the greatest comeback in history for Trump and for America. So here's my game plan for how Trump can make Trump and America great again. This is Wayne Root's game plan, and I like a lot of this, folks. We're going to talk about certain parts of it as they come up. All right, folks, let's go. First, Trump must become the kingmaker of the GOP. The Trump army is 74 million people strong, and folks, I would beg to say it's bigger than that. The Republican Party belongs to Trump. He should remake the party in his image. In some ways, his defeat was empowering. As president, Trump couldn't get rid of the rhinos and never-Trumpers because he needed their votes. But from the outside, he can remake the party, elect Trump allies, and end the careers of the GOP traitors who stabbed him in the back. Are you listening, Liz Cheney? And I really enjoyed seeing Matt Gaetz in Wyoming protesting Liz Cheney. One thing I will say about this, when you look at the different people, right, that make up the Republican Party, it wouldn't be too difficult to do this. It wouldn't be too hard to vote out the people who backstabbed Trump. It wouldn't be too difficult for Trump to remake the party in his image. So I almost have an image like the genie from Aladdin, like Robin Williams as the blue genie being freed, and that freedom could make him more powerful than ever. It probably has nothing to do with the movie, but that's just how I imagine I remember it. Is what it is. You're going to have to make that make sense in your own head. Quote, Trump should recruit, not necessarily quote, just saying quote because I'm reading again, should recruit, endorse, and campaign for Trump Republicans in each GOP primary against rhinos, never Trumpers, and backstabbers. 74 million Trump voters will vote for Trump's chosen candidates in GOP primaries, and by 2022, the GOP could be made 100% remade over in Trump's image. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a big statement, but nothing is out of the realm of possibility. It really isn't if we all work together. We're seeing that with how the little guy can just attack Wall Street the way it's doing so, the big hedge funds and those who don't want us coming into their world. If we can affect them there, we can affect them anywhere. We can do our jobs, come out to the polls and elect the right people and put them in the right place. Secondly, Trump should spend the next 4 years fixing voter fraud at the state level. Trump should recruit his billionaire buddies to put up hundreds of millions to attack the problem. Trump's goal should be to reform election law in just the handful of states that cost him the election: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. Folks, would I also say that maybe you would have some mobile units in that area, some mobile folks that could keep an eye on what is going on, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, just having some of his billionaire buddies put up hundreds and millions to attack the problems, and just having them reforming the different election law in the handful of states that Trump lost due to the leftist cheating. Folks, I don't think that's enough. I think the left would try to counter that. All right, think about this, and go through a state we wouldn't expect, right? And then that state would then come out of the blue and sucker punch us at the last minute, trying to steal the next election. I don't think that would be a very good thing. And I think that that's a possibility, ladies and gentlemen. If Trump spends his time, money, and focus on reforming election laws in those 6 states, the GOP is back in business in 2022 and 2024. And I invite somebody to test what I am thinking would work as an actual test for this. Thirdly, Trump needs to raise billions from his billionaire backers to build TMN, Trump Media Network. That should include a national cable TV network, national talk radio network, new versions of the Drudge Report, possibly called the Trump Report, and conservative versions of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Conservatives will never again have to depend on the mainstream media or Silicon Valley to get our news and opinions out. And if Trump does that, I'm actually okay with that, because then maybe we'll get lucky enough to partner with TMN as a sponsor. That would help really fund things here at the American Reveille. Right, Craig? Sheesh. Only Trump has the money, brand, and fundraising ability to change the media and social media landscape like this. And think of the amazing bonus. Not only will 74 million Trump voters have permanent places to communicate, but if we all move away from the mainstream media and social media, they'll collapse. Trump will cripple his enemies and put many of them out of business. That is a possibility. Lastly, here's one more idea for Trump. Run for Congress in 2022. That's actually pretty interesting. We should look that up. If anybody wants to look it up, let me know if anybody's been the president and then later came back and been a senator or a congressman. That's kind of interesting. So he's saying that Trump should run for Congress in 2022. Pick any GOP-friendly district in Florida where you're loved. Primary a rhino who stabbed you in the back. You'll win the primary by a landslide since it's a GOP district. You're guaranteed victory in the general election. Once in Congress, with the GOP regaining control in 2022 and most of the candidates loyal to you, you'll be elected Speaker of the House. From that platform, Trump can lead the impeachment of President Biden. Wouldn't that be ridiculous? I'm just saying. I'm not saying that this is going to happen, all right? I don't want you to think that I'm endorsing this, that I'm saying that this is what it is, but I'll tell you, it's hilarious. It really is. If Trump somehow became the Speaker of the House of Representatives and then was in charge of the impeachment proceedings for Joe Biden, that would be so funny, ladies and gentlemen. It would be so funny. And because I'm reading this article that Wayne Root wrote, I feel that it's only respectful to read this last part here that he heads down at the bottom. Wayne Allen Root is known as the conservative warrior. Wayne is the author of the new #1 national best-selling book, Trump Rules. Wayne is a CEO, entrepreneur, and host of the nationally syndicated War Raw podcast. Visit rootforamerica.com or listen live at http://usaradio.com/Wayne-Allen-Root/ or on demand 24/7 at iHeartRadio.com. Ladies and gentlemen, I like that idea. I like the idea of Trump starting a news network. I like the idea of him running for Congress. I think anything to really piss off and frustrate the left and make it more difficult for them to achieve their evil plans of world domination, basically, I'm for. So whatever plan, the better plan. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Trump could pull any of those off. I really do. I do think he's going to build a company of sorts. I know he's already built these nonprofits, or he's in the process of building these nonprofits. He's already not coming out and saying he's going to go into some quiet seclusion or anything. No, Trump is here to stay. He's going to be loud. He's going to be proud, and he's going to still rattle cages all over the place. That is what it is, plain and simple, folks. Plain and simple. But, you know, Donald Trump woke us up, and one thing people are neglecting to see is that the Trumpism, the MAGA virus, if you will, is still spreading. All right, folks, people are still waking up all over the place. So just give it a chance. All right, be ready, because people are seeing more and more the truth, especially with everything we've seen on Wall Street, everything we've seen in the news, finding out how corrupt and crooked most news outlets are. I mean, folks, something big is on the way. What else could I say? It feels like it, doesn't it? Am I wrong? Think about that. Think about how you feel deep inside and tell me, don't you feel like something big is coming? I'm not saying that it has to be something violent or something horrible like that. I'm just saying it's something big. I don't think history is done happening. All right, folks. So we're just going to have to wait it out and see what unfolds as time goes by. Ladies and gentlemen, and speaking of time going by, time seems to be Andrew Cuomo's enemy, ladies and gentlemen, because first of all, we found out from, Letitia James? Is that her name? Letitia James, the New York Attorney General who can't hold the secrets any longer. Cuomo has been lying about the numbers of deaths in nursing homes. The deaths could be up to 50% worse than they have been reported. And now it's turning out that Cuomo thinks he's smarter than everybody else, and it's costing people lives. New York Governor Cuomo shunned experts, embraced lobbyists, drove top health officials to quit over pandemic response. Look, folks, really quick, before I get into this, we're talking about this guy that jerks his own chain, whose brother jerks his chain, who they in tandem jerk your chain. They tell people just how horrible, all right, just how horrible Donald Trump was while systematically murdering their state and their elderly population. Folks, Cuomo's a bad dude. He's a real bad dude. All right. An evil dude, somebody who is literally a grown adult. He's supposed to be a grown man who cannot accept responsibility. When you are the boss, when you are the leader, you own the problem. You are responsible. Whether you went over to an elderly folks home and bludgeoned somebody to death with a hammer, or whether you ordered people to be put back into those homes, you are responsible. But instead, you're living in fairy tale land. You're living in Frodoville with Smeagol and the Precious in New York, all right? And you're shunning experts. You're embracing lobbyists. You're driving the top health officials to quit over the pandemic response. Folks, we're going to read at least 9 top New York health officials have left their posts since March of last year over Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo's handling of the pandemic. Health officials frustrated at Cuomo's response to the pandemic have resigned or changed jobs as morale among public health workers has dropped. The governor ignored advice from his public health experts while using them as a foil during a recent press conference while answering questions on the pandemic, according to the New York Times. That's really pathetic sounding. Quote, when I say experts in air quotes, it sounds like I'm saying I don't really trust the experts, Cuomo said Friday, referring to all government experts, because I don't. State health officials have grown increasingly irritated at Cuomo's approach to the pandemic, claiming that the governor has issued top-down orders to combat the coronavirus without first notifying health department staff. Typically, he has announced an order then directed health officials to adapt. All right, to adapt to it with no prior warning. All right, that's no process of voting anything in or working with anybody or talking to anybody about anything. That's just giving orders, plain and simple. One of the latest incidents occurred in Cuomo's shaping of the state's vaccine distribution plan. The governor scrapped a plan that health officials at all levels of state government had been working on in some fashion or another for about 2 decades, as the Times reported. In the fall, Mr. Cuomo shelved vaccine distribution plans that top state health officials had been drawing up. One person with knowledge of the decision said that the plans had relied in part on years of preparations, folks, years. That goes to show that Cuomo isn't afraid to destroy tradition. An outgrowth of bioterrorism fears following September 11th and on experience dispensing vaccines through county health departments during the H1N1 pandemic in 2009. As a result, local officials across the state complained that their efforts to vaccinate were undercut by the Cuomo plan. Wait a minute. Why are we not doing this? Anthony J. Picente Jr., a Republican who is county executive in upstate Oneida County, said he remembered thinking. Instead of leaving vaccination plans to be run by local officials, Cuomo instead spoke with hospital executives, outside consultants, and a top hospital lobbyist in closed-door meetings. Basically, he is saying that Cuomo is the all-knowing, all-seeing eye of the world. He knows what to do. He doesn't need anybody's help from the little people. He is the face. He is the king. He is the one to put this forward. And if it fails, it cannot be him. It can only be the incompetence of other people, ladies and gentlemen, blue-collar people, people like you and I. Folks, people like you and I. This is crazy. All right, folks. Hospitals were put in charge of vaccinating their own employees as well as residents. All right. The approach, critics say, resulted in bottlenecks and people placed in charge of a vaccination program that they were not trained to handle. The governor's approach in the beginning seemed to go against the grain in terms of what the philosophy was about how to do this. All right. Former New York City Health Department Deputy Commissioner Dr. Isaac Weisfuse said it did seem to negate 15 or 20 years of work, ladies and gentlemen. Cuomo, he responded to allegations of mishandling the pandemic by asserting that he is fighting for New Yorkers. If Times reporters think I push hospitals too hard and local governments too hard, I say I'm a fighter for the people of New York, and I believe that I'm saving lives. And that's what he said to the Times, and he could believe that he's saving lives. But he could also be out of his damn mind. I mean, that's an absolute possibility, too. He could be an insane person. He could be a pea pod. What do I mean by a pea pod? Like he could be an alien pod person who he was replaced by a space alien who crept into his ear in the middle of the night. All right, took over his body and became this ridiculous living entity that spews literal diarrhea every time he opens his mouth. But folks, I'm just comparing the odds of things, ladies and gentlemen, just comparing the odds. Don't worry, this isn't Art Bell. I'm not really saying he's a pod person, or am I? For months, Cuomo, all right, has been accused of mishandling the pandemic early on by forcing New York nursing homes to accept COVID-19 positive patients before they tested negative for the disease. The accusations have gained more attention recently, and New York's top prosecutor, Letitia James, has determined that Cuomo's administration may have attempted to cover up mistakes by undercounting the number of elderly who died in nursing homes from the coronavirus. A report issued last week by Letitia James's office stated COVID-19 resident deaths associated with nursing homes in New York State appear to be undercounted by Department of Health by approximately 50%, folks. That's a big number. That really is. Cuomo deflected questions over his handling of the pandemic and nursing homes on Friday, blaming the federal government. Quote, "What I would say is everyone did the best they could. When I say the State Department of Health, as the report said, the State Department of Health followed federal guidance. So if you think there was a mistake, then go talk to the federal government," Cuomo said. It's not about pointing fingers of blame. Of course it's not, right? When you are the one to blame. It's that this became a political football, right? Look, whether a person died in the hospital or died in a nursing home, it's the people died. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of this report here is pretty infuriating, but at the same time, we've kind of come to understand at this point how it seems to work in New York, haven't we? This Wild West, this bias world, this almost crime, probably not even almost, actual crime syndicate of local government floating around New York with Governor Andrew Cuomo leading the pack. Ladies and gentlemen, scary stuff, very scary stuff. But you know, folks, when you have somebody like this, what does that say to immigrants? What does that say to Americans thinking of committing crimes, or folks from other countries that have to judge the reputation of this country? What does that say when people like the Cuomos of this country can get away with these things? When the stores, not the stores, the police They don't prosecute these folks. I mean, it seems like now Letitia James might be doing something, but I read that report. She was very careful with how she spoke. But it just feels like these leftist elites get away with murder on a daily basis, and they are never, ever held accountable. All right? And it's starting to feel like maybe, just maybe, Andrew Cuomo may be held accountable. We'll have to keep watching, and we'll have to keep our eyes open. All right, folks. In the meantime, Vladimir Putin himself thinks we are heading for a very big problem, thinks we are heading for a world war-like conditions, believes that the time period we're in right now reflects very similar time period to that of World War II. And we really should take a look at what he has to say, especially being that Russia's been a big part of every one of those conflicts. Just listen to this. Vladimir Putin warns of the end of our civilization at Davos. You know Davos, Great Reset, billionaires, all that crazy fun stuff. Very Dr. Evil-esque. Let's read. This is from Ben Weldon, January 28th, 2021. Russian President Vladimir Putin gave an ominous speech to the World Economic Forum on Wednesday, warning the Chinese coronavirus pandemic and the rising income inequality threatened to thrust the world into all-out conflict, all right? All against all conflict. This was in the Sydney Morning Herald. All right, folks. The country has also struggled. The Russian leader made his first speech to the forum in 12 years as he faces widespread international scrutiny over the alleged assassination attempt and subsequent imprisonment of his main political rival, Alexei Navalny. We saw that a couple months back when he had been poisoned. Folks, the country has also struggled to contain the Chinese coronavirus pandemic. All right, and has suffered one of the worst outbreaks in the world. In December, Russia announced that it had documented 186,000, more than 3 times. All right, this is 186,000 deaths. All right, folks, more than 3 times its previous reported figures. At that time, the country had recorded 3.1 million cases, giving it the 4th largest count worldwide. The government has also taken harsh criticism for its handling of the outbreak, including the harsh lockdowns, which have impacted and impeded normal business operations. Now, Putin drew several comparisons between current conditions in the world and those of the 1930s, which precipitated World War II, and cautioned world leaders to avoid any comparable escalations. I kind of agree with Vladimir Putin here. Things are pretty hot and hectic out in the world theater. Quote, nowadays, such a heated conflict is not possible. At least I hope it's not possible in principle, because it would mean the end of our civilization, folks. There is a possibility we may experience a natural collapse in global development that might result in a fight of all against all. That was the worst Russian impression I've ever done. First. Second, Vladimir Putin, sir, if you ever hear me make that impression, please don't have me murdered. It was a joke. I know you don't sound like that. Now that I've hopefully saved my skin, let's get back to this, folks. Russia currently faces harsh opposition from European and American leaders over its alleged targeting of Navalny, and it's dealing with large-scale domestic protests over his subsequent imprisonment. The Russian dissident became ill during a flight from Siberia to Moscow in August of last year and fell into a coma, which prompted his relocation to Germany for treatment, though the Russian doctors treating him voiced their objections. Navalny has since recovered. German doctors declared there was unequivocal proof that his mysterious illness was the result of exposure to Novichok, a Russian nerve agent notorious for being used in political assassinations. Novichok. It's a Russian nerve agent, all right? This is some James Bond crap. Navalny himself has personally accused Putin of ordering his assassination, which Putin adamantly denies, saying in December that had he ordered Navalny's death, his agents would have finished it. That's some cold stuff, man. Jeez, holy crap. Let's get back. Oopsie. That's some real dark stuff, man. That he would have just finished it. Jeez. The Kremlin has strongly resisted calls for, I'm sorry, I feel like Putin is just a scary guy. Like, really, think about it. He's like a KGB dude. But then again, I don't know if it's in his best interest for communist China to win and for the world to become this socialist hellhole. I know that the government in Russia is different. I know they're a different form of socialism, communism, whatever you want to call it. All right. I've had a long day. I'm not going to get too detailed with that. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't put Putin in control. It would put China in control. It would put Xi Jinping in control. So I don't know if Putin really wants that. You're going to have to let me know what you think in the comments below. You really are, because I just wonder. I wonder that all the time. The Kremlin, all right, has strongly resisted calls for an international investigation into Navalny's sudden illness, though it has at times made inconsistent pronouncements regarding its own investigation into the matter. Russian investigations, however, appear to focus more on Navalny and his actions rather than those of his alleged poisoners. Despite international pressure, Putin did extend an overture, all right, to the Western powers, expressing a desire for improved relations with them. Putin added the caveat that any such de-escalation would need mutual action to be successful, and we are ready for this. We would like to get this, and we'll do our best to achieve it. But it should not be a unilateral approach. It should be a common approach. So he's saying that the West and Russia should be able to keep de-escalating, keep building relations with each other. He's ready for Russia to move forward. We'll have to keep our eyes peeled. I think it's important that you guys know what's happening and what people think and what other powers in the world are talking about, especially out of the Great Reset Festival that is Davos. All right. You should. I know it's frustrating to hear, but you should know what the hell they're doing, because education, being informed, knowledge, that's the real power. That's how we push back, folks. That's how we push back. Folks, listen, at the end of the day, if you think that Cuomo's ridiculous, if you think that Putin's ridiculous, if you think the world's losing credibility, and you're looking for me to tell you something different, unfortunately, I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you that the world is getting dumber. In fact, the Nobel Peace Prize is probably the most meaningless thing on the planet now. It's so dumb. In fact, so dumb that BLM was nominated for one. BLM nominated, of course, for its role in its peaceful protesting for the last year, right? That's really hard to say without laughing, because it's not true at all. It's from hotair.com, folks. Karen Townsend, so dumb it's true. BLM nominated for Nobel Peace Prize, folks. I'm glad Trump's been nominated for like 500,000 Nobel Peace Prizes. But I mean, that just goes to show how much you have to actually win for it to mean anything, because why should BLM win a Nobel Peace Prize? They didn't cause any peace. They didn't cause any progress for the black community. If they did anything, they made things worse for everybody, made race relations worse, brought this critical race theory to the forefront, which invaded our institutions like a toxic plague, ladies and gentlemen. I don't see how the Nobel Peace Prize is worth more than a honkin' pile of dog poop at this point. Let's read A Norwegian parliamentarian, Peter Eide, I guess you would say that EIDE, has nominated Black Lives Matter, I guess in its entirety, for a Nobel Peace Prize. The far-left politician, a member of the Socialist Left Party, said the nomination was in recognition of the group's impact on raising awareness of racism worldwide. Marxists of the world unite. Was it by demonstrating racism that they were able to show the world what racism was? Because that's what it feels like. They were the racist ones, folks. They still are the racist ones. The Democrat Party hasn't changed. They are still the Democrats of the 1800s looking to enslave the minorities. Let's review. Black Lives Matter began in 2013 after the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the Trayvon Martin case. According to its website, Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation Incorporated is a global organization in the US, UK, and Canada whose mission is to eradicate white supremacy and build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes. They don't do any of this. Remember, folks, they use a different definition when they say white supremacy. They aren't talking about your skin color, ladies and gentlemen. The left sees white supremacy as a mindset. If you are trying to better your family, if you're trying to work hard, if you're trying to have a regular family with a mom and dad, they'll even get mad that I said regular family. Watch, you'll see. Folks, if you're doing any of that, all right, then you are a white supremacist, according to them. So they're not actually fighting any definition that we know. They're fighting their own definition, which doesn't require them to have to do anything other than loot, steal, and not leave their couch otherwise, folks. There were sporadic marches and protests from its founding until May 2020, when the death of George Floyd by a policeman in Minneapolis, not to mention George Floyd was overdosing on a bazillion grams of freaking fentanyl and having a heart attack or whatever. Minnesota set off the summer of love, ladies and gentlemen. The policeman in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with his knee on George Floyd, that is what it did. That is what it says according to the article. As the mayor of Seattle, Jenny Durkin, had dubbed it the Summer of Love, weekly protests and riots took place for months, led by Black Lives Matter. The summer months in particular were the worst months of violence and destruction in a generation. Some cities were still plagued with violent rioting in the name of social justice and civil rights. That is still happening in Portland. It's still happening in Seattle. Still happening in Olympia, Washington, Tacoma, Washington, you name it. People are getting hurt, and the Biden administration, the far left radicalized Biden administration, is doing nothing to stop them. The West Coast has become the leftist terrorists' playing grounds, ladies and gentlemen. Plain and simple. 3 black women, self-described Marxists, or as Patrice Cullors said in 2015, trained Marxists, founded Black Lives Matter. The co-founder was trained in Marxist-Leninist ideology by her mentor, Eric Mann, former agitator of the Weather Underground domestic terror organization. Quote, "We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of, ideological theories. And I think that what we really tried to do is build a movement that could be utilized by many, many black folk," Cullors added in the interview with Jared Ball of the Real News Network. There are chapters of Black Lives Matter across the country, folks. There is no separation between the BLM organization and the BLM protests. The protests and marches often turn violent, resulting in riots that have destroyed businesses and even resulted in death. Apologists for BLM, however, refuse to acknowledge the violent tendencies of the movement, often using the talking point that most protests are peaceful. Peter Eide dismisses questions about the violence. He blames police for the violence. Of course, there have been incidents, but most of them have been caused by the activities of either the police or counter-protesters. Eide said BLM leaders should be praised for their work in raising awareness of racism. I find that one of the key challenges we have seen in America, but also in Europe and Asia, is the kind of increasing conflict based on inequality. Ide said in his nominating statement obtained by The Guardian, Black Lives Matter has become a very important worldwide movement to fight racial injustice. They've had a tremendous achievement in raising global awareness and consciousness about racial injustice. And remember, it's their definition of racial injustice. All right. So whatever you think racial injustice is, check that at the door. You have to go by the BLM definition. Incidents, indeed, Ide's history in Nobel Peace Prize nominations include activists from Russia and China. Any member of parliament or university professor can nominate a person or organization for a Nobel Peace Prize. Directors of foreign policy institutes, past recipients, and members of the Norwegian Nobel Committee can also make nominations. Ide, 61, who has previously nominated human rights activists from Russia and China for the prize, said he appreciated how BLM have been able to mobilize people from all groups of society, not just African Americans, not just oppressed people. It's been a broad movement in a way which has been different from their predecessors. It's different because it's fooled low information people, folks that don't read past a headline, into thinking they're doing something good for the African American communities when in fact they are not doing anything good for anybody whatsoever. It's just a play on words. They just call it Black Lives Matter, but they don't really do much, if anything at all, for Black people. His written nomination concludes awarding the Peace Prize to Black Lives Matter as the strongest global force against racial injustice will send a powerful message that peace is founded on equality, solidarity, and human rights, and that all countries must respect those basic principles. Nobody's arguing with that. The thing that gets argued with is that nobody's taking the time to define the words before they are put out, before we're arguing about them. Nobody's taking the time to say this is what equity means, this is what equality means, this is what racism means, because we are all hoping and praying and crossing our fingers that we all understand, at least we should understand, we have an education past the third grade, that racism is a bad thing and that we know what it is and it's oppressing somebody. It's against their skin color, their culture, their religion, but that isn't what is happening, folks, and that is not what they're fighting against. One of the stated goals of BLM is the elimination of the nuclear family. I wonder why they'd want to get dad out of the house, huh? They also demand an end to capitalism. During the last administration, much of their cries of outrage during rally speeches focused on Donald Trump and his supporters. The cash prize given to the Nobel Peace Prize winner is about $1 million. While Ide likes to refer to BLM in the broader term of the actions of the movement, the protests and marches, you can bet the Peace Prize will be accepted by the co-founders of the organization if they win. They will be there to pick up the check while they no doubt deliver an acceptance speech decrying the evils of capitalism. I'll note here that all three of the co-founders have signed on with talent representatives in Hollywood and are negotiating deals in the entertainment industry to cash in on their fame. Think Netflix and cable television deals. That sounds like capitalism is working very well for the founders of Black Lives Matters, ladies and gentlemen. Folks, it's very hard because you want to praise Trump on one hand for winning these Nobel Peace Prize nominations, right? 5, 6, 10,000 of them, however many, it's a ton now, for Middle Eastern peace. That I take seriously, but it's hard because the value of the Nobel Peace Prize itself has just gone completely down the pooper. Completely down the pooper, folks. That's just what it is. When BLM can win for peace, or at least win a nomination for peace, for awareness, when people can't even define what they're becoming aware of because the group is actually fooling people into being racist, folks, unfortunately, the Nobel Prize has lost its credibility in my eyes. That's what I have to say about that. That's what I believe, and that's the end of that story. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, folks, or email me directly, JAMESLANE@AmericanReveille.com. Folks, do me a favor, check out the website, sign up for the newsletter. Please do me that favor. We are building the new website. It's coming along great. The street teams are coming along great. It's been hard to get a lot of content out to you. I'm trying to balance this and trying to get my topic approval for my PhD dissertation out as well. So I apologize. I know that the content has been a little shaky coming out, but like I said in the beginning, we'll get things back on schedule and it'll be smooth. It'll smooth itself out, folks. So do me that favor. Go there, sign up. If you'd like to support us, if you'd like to give us a little donation, you can click the support us tab. We greatly appreciate it. We are using that for branding, trademarking, copywriting, all kinds of different stuff that we definitely use it for. Folks, if you're not watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Check out Odyssey, Odyssee. You can find me on there. I'm American_Reveille. Please follow me on Odyssey. It's like YouTube. It's actually really easy to use. I enjoy it, and I think it's a good one. Same with Rumble. Come over to Rumble, subscribe to my channel, American_Reveille, REVEILLE. All right, keep subscribing, keep doing the Rumble thing. We have to break out on other alternative forms and platforms, folks. Follow along, subscribe to my channels there. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, do me a favor. Please leave me a 5-star review. All right. It helps move me up the rankings. More patriots see what we're doing. They get to hear what we're doing, folks, and we get to wake up more people on the right that are looking for a good source of information and entertainment that will really empower them with the tools they need to get through the craziness that's going on now, folks. All right. Any feedback, any suggestions, email me directly, JAMESLANE at AmericanReveille.com. I appreciate your patience, guys. We are building. All right. If you haven't been seeing me, I am shadow banned on a lot of channels. So please share. Talk about the American Reveille. Check us out at www.americanreveille.com. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, JAMESLANE here, and thank you for watching that clip. Folks, I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much that we're going to be going old school and finding ways to hit the street in a town or city near you. What do I mean by hit the street? I mean street team, folks. Old school 90s lanyards, pamphlets, stickers, and there's going to be a special surprise for all those who participate. Folks, if you want early in to what you're hearing, if you want to know more about what I'm talking about there, do me a favor, email me directly, JAMESLANE at AmericanReveille.com. That's JAMESLANE at AmericanReveille.com. There's going to be a very, very special secret benefit to those who want to participate. Besides that, head to the website. You see it right there on the screen, www.americanreveille.com. That's www.americanreveille.com. You see that big green button? It says sign up. Hit that button, folks. Sign up for the American Reveille newsletter. Sign up for Project Underground Railroad. What this is going to do is, while Parler's down, while everything's a fritz, while people don't know what up is and what down is, what left is and what right is, I'm going to give you some daily updates, keep your mind in the right track, the right frame, keep you headed in the right direction, and update you on how we are organizing, working together, and building a coalition of like-minded individuals. Folks, big things are coming, and they are going to be magnificent, and I want you to be a part of them. So please keep informed. Sign up for the newsletter at www.americanreveille.com. If you're still with me, if you still want to help out, do me another great favor. Head over to Rumble, folks, www.rumble.com, and find me there, American Reveille. The name itself is American Reveille put together on the channel. So American, REVEILLE, if you search for it. One word, all right? American Reveille. And subscribe there. We're trying to build a base there. We're trying to get off YouTube and some of the other places that are cutting our distribution. We've already been shadow banned off of Facebook, off of Twitter, off of everywhere else. But folks, I'm not some kid. I'm not some quitter. I'm one of you. I'm a blue-collar, white-knuckle American, a calloused hand, hard-working SOB. And they ain't going to kill me off of that easy, folks. So we're going to go old school, like I said, and we're going to have more news about that coming very, very soon. Again, thank you so much for watching that great clip, and make sure you tune in next time.